Hello my friends, and welcome back to the next installment of the Divide and Conquer faction overviews. This week we return as the Stewardom of Gondor. Now apologies for the delay, I meant to have this video out last week. However, as I was saying in the last overview, I basically mentioned that I would be having a engineering exam, so I took the weekend off, and then I was going to record after that. And I did start a recording, but the energy levels just weren't there. I wasn't really feeling too happy with the way I had conducted the overview, so I just scrapped it, took the weekend off, and now here we are on the third week out since the last video, where I now plan to get back onto schedule with things. I will say I did pass my engineering exam, so I can now become a engineer in training, a certified EIT, right after I get my diploma, which I'll have in just a couple of weeks here, as I am graduating very soon. So as long as things don't get too crazy between now and then, with finals and the last bits of coursework that I have, I should be able to get everything back onto schedule, though I've said this many times, so sometimes life gets in the way, and if it does, I apologize for not meeting my agendas that I set, but I'm going to try my best to get back onto schedule here as things still pick up. Anyway, without any further ado, let us get on with the overview with the faction of Gondor. Now, Gondor, you are a very, very powerful nation of men. You have many powerful infantry choices with great archer options and even some dedicated elite cavalry that you can get. Though Gondor's core cavalry isn't the strongest cavalry unit, and you're not necessarily a cavalry nation, you do have some very powerful armored knights that you can employ. In addition, you are also the biggest nation in the game at turn 1, as you have 14 regions, basically sprawling all the way from Minas Tirith to the far west settlements of Anulond and Saruland in the southern side of the White Mountains. Of course, Dol Amroth is your ally. They are not your vassal, but they are your ally, and they, of course, have the Cape of Belfalas, with Dol Amroth, Methras, Gobel Tolfalas, and Edelond to your west, as well as Linhir. You are bordered by the Anduin River, the White Mountains, and that's, I guess, pretty much it. The ocean also. You have a lot of very safe regions and a lot of land that can make a lot of money. So we'll talk about settlements first, then go into the generals we have, the economy, scripts, and all of that, nearby expansion, and so on. So, starting with the settlements, I guess we'll just start here in the center of your territory, where most of the action is going to be happening. Of course, you have the city of Minas Tirith, which does have some unique buildings, does have the Tower of Ecthelion, which allows you to train your Fountain Guard, the Great Gates, which just reinforce the gates, the Orthram, which just gives you a Law Order bonus, and you have the Anor Stone, giving you an increase to trade, and it is decently well developed at turn start. You have a leather worker, you have the library, the land clearance, you have a meeting hall and a barracks, along with the practice range and the stables, including a shipwright. So you have a very well developed starting city, which makes sense as Gondor is, you know, pretty much the last, I wouldn't say the last standing kingdom, probably they are the most powerful kingdom and the most well-developed of all of the nations of men at this time in Middle-earth's history. So you have Minas Tirith, which also is surrounded by the Ramus Ekor. This allows only certain pathways to be crossed into Minas Tirith, where you can only enter through the gatehouses. And to my knowledge, if you are to fight a battle on these tiles, it will be the special battle map for the Ramus Ekor. So chances are you're not going to really ever have that happen, as you will most likely hold Mordor off at West Osgiliath, which I will now talk about as the next settlement. So you do start turn 1 with West Osgiliath. Pretty undeveloped, it's kind of just a ruined settlement, but you do have East Osgiliath on the other side, which Mordor is always going to take with Krishnak's army at the beginning of the game. To the north, you have Caer Andros, the island fortress, which is your other point of entry in your wars against Mordor. To the west, you have Calenhad over here, which is your closest region to Rohan. It does have a gold resource, so the mines in Calenhad can be very, very profitable. Note there are some rebels here. Captain Gay, I guess is his name, who is the Druidane rebels that are over here in the Forest of the Druidane, just representing their presence in this region. To the south, you do have Karasas, which is where your Axemen of Lasarnok come from. This is a very great region to have. It can get lots of farming income as well as trade. Pelargir, the major port settlement to the south here along the River Anduin. To the west of that, Fanulon, which borders the Straits of the Anduin, where there is a land crossing over here. Brethil is just a standard keep, nothing too special happening there. Tarnost and Ethering kind of in the center of your regions, and it is recommended to make your capital be one of these settlements. So currently, having not built anything or done any actions, we are losing about 600 gold a turn. However, if you make Tarnost your capital, you should see that we are now actually gaining 800 gold per turn. So that is, I would recommend, always do that first at the beginning of the game because it's going to help you just make more money. So Ethering and Tarnost can make a lot of good income over here. Calimbel is also over here, kind of a little farther out. Great settlement for income as well. These 3 settlements can make a lot of trading income, so it's worth investing in that. To the north, the town of... I know it's the Stone of Erech, so I believe the town was also called Erech over here also. That has now been replaced with a fort, but Duin here is placed there, and we'll go through all the generals shortly. Farther west, you do have Saralon and Longalen. Now, Longalen can be one of your most profitable settlements as you keep developing trade here, specifically with the port line and the merchant's wharf line. This settlement can easily make you 4 to 5 grand per turn with relatively little development. I mean, you do have to invest in the ports and the merchants buildings, but it can make you a ton of money, so it is very much worthwhile to invest in Longalen. That is a huge source of income. And before I get too deep in this, I did want to give a quick shout out to Volprixies, who did present me with a great overview of everything Gondor related, just to make sure that I'm not missing anything here. So I do have his notes on my other monitor here that I may be referring to, but I did mostly catch a lot of that detail. So thanks to him for doing that for me. And then your farther, most westernmost province is Annuland, which doesn't really make a whole lot of money. Your biggest issue is going to be corruption. So a good way to save money with Gondor is to develop meeting halls in your farther settlements to get free upkeep for your generals and for your police forces. And plus, in addition to the free upkeep that you'll get, you'll also have reduced corruption by having law buildings. So it's probably best to invest in meeting halls all across your provinces just to start dealing with the corruption penalties and giving you free upkeep, as that will save you a lot of money. You can make just a ton of money with Gondor as long as you manage your realm properly. That is, to get free upkeep, to eliminate corruption, and to basically build up trade and farming. Like, you can make a lot of money. Really, you only need to prepare for military infrastructure on your front lines, which would be here in Minas Tirith, Caer Andros, Calenhat, and maybe Caerasast if you want the Lasarnoch Axemen. Maybe there's an argument to develop military in Pelargir also. But all of these central regions, you really don't need to be building barracks, stables, or ranges. You can really just get by with the grain exchanges, meeting halls, and developing the roads here, as well as doing farming. And that's all you really need for most of these regions. There is an argument to be made to develop perhaps Annuland for expansion, which we'll get into expansion shortly here. I want to talk about the characters next, as that's typically my usual order. So, of course, starting off, you do have Steward Denethor, who himself does reside in Minas Tirith. He does have a unique strategy map model, as you can see here. He does come with a special ability. He does have Iron Fist, which is a fantastic ability. I mean, permanent fatigue reduction and extra army combat effectiveness for 30 seconds. So that is a fantastic ability. He does not have a unique bodyguard. He just has the standard captain's bodyguard. Next here is Boromir, who resides in West Osgiliath with a contingent of armored Gondor spearmen, infantry, and archers, so they have the visual upgrades. Boromir also should have a... Yeah, he does have his own campaign map model where he is in his armor. He comes with a unit of Osgiliath veterans, and his special ability is still defensive stance. Honestly, it needs to be leadership, because the leadership ability uses his voice lines, and it's such an easy change to do. I might just go ahead and implement this and send it into the mod team and just be like, look, this needs to be changed. He needs to have leadership because he's the one who uses that voice line and says it in the films. Boromir is a very powerful general, of course having a unique biography, plenty of hit points. He is unlikely to die anytime soon, and does have very, very great retinue points. And the Osgiliath veterans are a very powerful bodyguard. 13 melee attack, 6 missile attack. They do use stakes So he is a great general to have. You don't want to let Boromir die, and he is key in the defense of the Anduin here, and keeping Mordor off of you at the crossings here of the Osgiliaths. To the north, we have Huron of the Keys, just a standard bodyguard on him, no special ability, he just guards Caer Andros. Over here in the fort of Henneth Anun is, of course, Faramir, who comes with armor upgraded, though not visually upgraded, Athelian Rangers. He also has unique ability, he uses leadership. Honestly, I would just probably swap his leadership for defensive stance and then give leadership to Boromir. That would be like my proposed change, as I think that just makes more sense. But Faramir does have a great bodyguard here. This settlement is very defensible here in Henneth Anun, though it is just a fort, so you would have to supplement it with reinforcements from Caer Andros. I'd probably recommend, if you can, like if you see a big Mordor force coming for him, just retreat him back to Caer Andros and hold over here rather than suffer a chance for Faramir to pass away. There is one other thing to note of Henneth Anun, and I've talked about this in a overview video before. Its model is tied to Caer Andros' model, so if you don't have Caer Andros on screen, you will just see the standard fort, and that's also present in Mordor with Cirith Ungol over here. If you get Minas Morgul off screen, it does show that they are just forts, but they do have their models tied with that. So that is just something that cannot be, there is no workaround for that to keep them with a permanent model, as their resource slots were used elsewhere. So if you see that, it's not a bug, it's just a limitation of the game engine and the way that the model was implemented. Over in Galahad, we just have Calamir, nothing special about him, he's just a regular general. To the south, now we get into our other unique generals, starting with Forlong the Fat, who does have a unique strategy map model with the axe in his hand. He does have a special ability being leadership. He has the Axe of Lossarnark, and he has the Lossarnark Axemen, which are your best shock infantry units that you have as Gondor. So a great general, but he can also be a great general. But he is fantastic for just slaying Uruk bodyguards and other... Like, he's a Nazgul killer, too. The Axemen are a fantastic unit at fighting Nazgul. Over in Pelargir, we do have Orodreth of Pelargir, who just comes with the Lebanon Guardsmen, or no, Lebanon Marines. Not the strongest bodyguard, but they are your only real javelin unit that you have, so they do have some use against fighting against Great Beasts of Mordor or Mumakil of Harad. They do have some uses there. Over in Fanulon, you just have Hanyan. Nothing special with Hanyan, just regular bodyguard. Brethil, you do have Turlin. Same thing going on over here, just a regular general. Mostly these standard bodyguards, you're just going to use these guys as governors. You're probably not going to use them out in the field. But in Tarnost, we get to a very interesting general, as you do have Eorthorn, who is a Swan Knight and comes with the Royal Swan Guard. Now, Eorthorn does not have any special abilities. He also does not have anything that really boosts his hit points outside of his trait of being one of the Dunedain. So, what I would recommend with Eorthorn is get him every single retinue that you can that improves hit points. So that would be like Gondorian armor, the Gondorian shield. I'm trying to think, are there other ones that I can think of? Denethor probably has something here. Not Steward of Gondor, you wouldn't want to give him that, but give him like Gondor armor, that'll give him +1 hit points. Give him the Gondorian shield, which I think Boromir should have. Yeah, +1 hit points, and then anything that gives a bonus to personal security, so like the Watchdog and anything else, that will increase his bodyguard size. So you should be able to get the Swan Guard to around a unit strength of about 20 or so, and then giving him extra hit points. That can make him be a very potent elite bodyguard, but they do start with only 13. They can't do a ton of damage, but once you start giving them extra, extra men in their battalion, and you give them extra hit points, they can become quite powerful. He is squishy early on, only 1 hit point plus his extra amount for being a general. Like, he can die early if you don't give him those traits. So you're going to want to develop Eorthorn, and he can become a very nice general for you. Over in Ethring, you do have Dervonin. He does have a few unique traits, Lord of Ethring and Farming Advisor, so he is great to just keep here, keep him as a governor, develop the farming here, but just a standard bodyguard, so you probably won't be sending him anywhere else. Over in Calambarrel, we have another unique general, Angbar the Fearless, who does have a unique strategy map model with the kind of, I guess he's wearing the kilt, and then he's wearing the pauldrons underneath it, but he does have the Lemidin clansmen, the kind of Scottish Highlanders of Gondor as they are, an armor-piercing mace and shield unit that hangs out here. He is also quite good, does have a biography, so he does have extra hit points here and there, and he can be a decent general, though these units do kind of fall off a little bit in the late game. But use them in battle or keep him here in Callambel. The choice is yours. Doing here of the Fort of Eric, or the Town of Eric, standard strategy map model, but he does have the Blackroot Vale Archers, who are a okay archer. They're better than the Archer Militia at shooting, but they're worse than the standard Gondor Archers at shooting, though they might have a range advantage. I'd have to double check that later. They do, however, have a melee attack increase. They have 8 melee attack, as they do use a two-handed sword, although only he has 8 melee attack because he has chevrons and a melee attack upgrade with the weapons. Normally it's just going to be 6 melee attack for these guys before experience upgrades, but they do have that going on. They're a little more aggressive in melee, and they have decent range, but they're not the best archers. They're just a little supplemental unit. Over in Longillan, you do have Galazgil. No special... Well, he does have a special ability. He has defensive stance. I could have sworn he didn't. But he's the Earl of Longillan, and most likely you will just keep him here. His bodyguard are the Onfalos Pikemen, which aren't a bad bodyguard by any means, but you'll probably just want to be keeping him here. In Saruland, one of your more useful bodyguards is Herluin of Penethgillen. He does have a unique model with the green colors here, the green cape of Penethgillen. He has Penethgillen Cavalry as his bodyguard, and of course just having any cavalry bodyguard is incredibly useful. I usually use Herluin to basically be my leading general for taking settlements in the west, which would be like Kirthior, Tharagrondos. You might be able to get the Bullhorn, but you're probably going to be fighting Isengard with him. And finally, our last general here, Dinenian of Anulond. He also has the Onfalos Pikemen as his bodyguard. Nothing too special around here. You'll probably just use him as a governor to help with your public order here, while Herluin does the heavy lifting in the west. I also typically like to send Duin here over to the west, since his archers can be useful if you need to fight Enedwythe or some of the lighter units of Isengard. So that will go into my talk of Rebel expansion. As we've already said, Kirthior is an option, so is Tharagrondos. You might be able to get the Bullhorn, and it does have gold, which makes it pretty useful. Isengard does like to basically pour west. They like to expand to Brignos and Gund, and then they might end up encroaching upon your lands. You do have these forts where you can defend from, but you may also need to take the offensive against Isengard, which will help Rohan out in the long term as well. I would recommend seeking an alliance with the men of Enedwythe so you don't need to fight them, and you have at least one ally here to basically protect your western borders, and you can just focus on Isengard. Now, in the east, you do have limited rebel expansion. You do have Ostathil here across the river Anduin. You also have maybe Tir Ethraid if you wanted to go down there, but I generally don't like to hold these regions. I don't like to expand over here in the early game, just because it's not fun fighting armies of horse archers. It really isn't. I mean, you basically have to fight them from within the walls of a city. And if you take Ostathil, you are now giving Mordor an extra region and Khand an extra region to attack. So I'd recommend really just turtle here at the Osgiliaths, or if you want to rush Minas Morgul, you can, though that will trigger some extra Nazgul armies earlier on. I like to just turtle here until I have powerful armies and then move out from there while expanding in the west and building my economy. Over in the west, you are allied to Rohan, so you can't expand in that direction, and you could try to take the swamps here in Dagorlad, but it's not the most useful place to have. Really, I'd recommend just turtle here in Minas Tirith at the Osgiliaths and Caer Andros until you have very powerful armies, and then when you can safely and comfortably take Minas Morgul and the Blackgate, that is when you want to push into Mordor, where you can hold them in these regions. Now, there's always a 50-50 chance that Khand will join the forces of good, and then you have another ally, which is great. However, if they remain evil, Dol Amroth will not alone be able to fend off the armies of Khand, Harad, and the Ardenaim. They will need support, so at some point you probably will want to have an army operating down here around the Anduin Vale to assist Dol Amroth to kind of keep your other enemies out from you, because the last thing you want is for Harad or Khand to start sending stacks up here into Fenulon and into Pelargir and basically encroaching upon near your heartlands from the southern side. So you will need to help them out here. Other scripts that are going on with Gondor, you do have the Madness of Denethor script, which I believe starts in a couple of turns here past turn 2. It doesn't start immediately, but essentially Denethor will start with some positive traits as he is combating Sauron with the Palantir over in Minas Tirith, but over time his mental health will degrade, resulting in reduced traits for him. That really only affects him and like a very minor effect on your faction. It's a very minor thing, it's mostly just here for lore and flavor. But should Boromir or Faramir die, he will succumb to his madness quicker and suffer negative traits. The way to alleviate that is to basically destroy Mordor, destroy the ring, or start conquering their settlements. If you start winning the war, it will revert his negative traits there. But it will basically start to whittle away from him. That's pretty much it for the scripts that Gondor has. The Corsair invasion has been removed, so you do not need to worry about random armies spawning out here along the bays of Belfalos and so on. However, the Ardenheim at some point may manually send ships out with troops to attack your regions, in which case you will need to defend the coastlines with a small navy if you wish to prevent that. So it is now more of an active thing between the nations and is more natural than just having a random army spawn to take like Longallan and to take Anulon, because it just didn't make sense to have that happen. It's out of your control. Now it is in your control to actually defend the seas and defend your coastlines. Now, as for unique construction, you do have pretty much access to everything. The advanced blacksmiths have been removed, but you do have the Númenórean armor as your tier 5. As for military recruitment, you use the standard medieval 2 system, split between a stables, a barracks, and the range. So in general, the stables will give you Gondor Cavalry Militia and Gondor Cavalry. Through the barracks line, you can get your standard Gondor Militia, Territorial Guardsmen, Spearmen, Infantry, Wardens of the White Tower, Citadel Guard, and Fountain Guard. Pretty much all of these units are just Spear and Shield or Sword and Shield units, minus the Fountain Guard. So you have limited, like in your core roster, it's basically, you don't have armor-piercing options, you don't really have specialists, you just have sturdy infantry that are good at their roles, like the Wardens of the White Tower, the Gondor Infantry, and the Spearmen here. Your specialist units will come from your fiefdoms, and because of the fiefdom system, you do have a unique barracks here in the fiefdom barracks. So this can be built in Minas Tirith, it can be built in Dol Amroth, and apparently it can also be built in Umbar, courtesy of Volprixes. I'm pretty sure that's true also. He probably knows a little more than me about that system, because I don't really have to take Umbar as Gondor. But with the fiefdom barracks, you can get centralized recruitment of your fiefdom units. This includes the Pynethgellan Cavalry, Anfilos Pikemen, the Blackroot Vale Archers, Lamadin Clansmen, Lebanon Marines, and the Amarothian Squires, which you can get from this. Now, it is very advised to upgrade the settlement, or sorry, the building, as when you get the fiefdom headquarters, that does unlock the same units, but it also adds Athelian Rangers, Lasarnoch Axemen, Seaward Lancers, Seaward Spearmen, and the very, very powerful Knights of the Silver Swan. So it is definitely worth getting the fiefdom headquarters. Do note it has a base cost of 9,000 gold and 8 turns to build, so you're probably going to want to have your builder's halls made for that. And I believe it requires a Lord's Hall. No, it requires the Númenórean armor, so that requires a tier 5 armor to get to. So it's going to take some time to actually get that. But honestly, you'll probably want to build up your armories to get armor upgrades on your troops, and then eventually go for this fiefdom barracks eventually. Though it's not something you can just rush, it will take some time to develop that, though you could probably save time and money if you build the Mason's Hall lines first. I'm not sure what is faster. If I had to guess, it's fastest to actually complete the Mason's Halls, and then go into the blacksmiths, and then go into the fiefdom headquarters. Just because these do eventually save you time, and they also save you a lot of money. But it might be faster just to... In fact, no, it is definitely faster to make the Mason's Halls, because the blacksmith itself takes 6 turns. The tier 5 probably takes like 8 turns here. 10 turns for the Númenórean armor. So yeah, build the Mason's Halls first in Minas Tirith, and then go for your smiths and then fiefdom barracks if you want to kind of rush that building. As terms of other unique buildings, I mean, you have everything else. You have tier 5 marketplaces, tier 4 farming. You do have plenty of regions that have mines. You can get the Merchant's Guild, allowing you to have a single merchant. And if you get the Armsmith's Guild, you do get the melee weapon bonus. That's pretty much it for the unique buildings. You can also rebuild both Osgiliaths. This does just require basically increasing the population, so you need to get West Osgiliath to 4,000, and I believe East Osgiliath is more or less the same there, though these places have very low initial populations. You can get the unique units, what are they called? They're the elite Minas Ithil Guardians. You can get those in Minas Morgul, though you do currently need to wait for the culture to raise. I think I'm also going to want to implement a change here and petition for it, is that basically just tying them to the unique building of Minas Morgul and maybe just having an initial wait time of maybe like 10 turns before you can train them, versus trying to get this place to 75% Dunedain culture and then having to wait for their replenishment. Like, it takes so long to get those units currently. It's definitely too long. I would say it'd be better just to remove the culture requirement and just require you to hold the region for a certain amount of time before you can train them. Like, I think 10 turns is fair. Then you can actually start to use the Minas Ithil Guardians. But that is not currently how it works. Currently, you have to wait for the culture and then wait for replenishment in your barracks line. So it takes a while to get them rolling here in Minas Morgul. And that's just a thing that I want to make a change. And I know many community users have petitioned for that in the suggestions thread in the Divide and Conquer Discord. So that's another change that needs to be done. Other changes that have happened in version 5, of course, you do start with a starting unit of Fountain Guard. I believe they were no, they were always here. You always had the Fountain Guard, but you didn't have free upkeep on them. You did have to wait until you built up your barracks. However, I did change it so you can just get them in the Tower of Ecthelion, which does allow you just to instantly have free upkeep, as it makes sense for them to have free upkeep where they are always garrisoned. But they are a fantastic unit, and you can initially recruit a second unit, so you can get 2 of these Fountain Guard, and they are pretty much key to holding Mordor off. They can hold the choke points in Osgiliath and Caer Andros very effectively. They are a very powerful pikeman and a key unit for holding your battles against Mordor. Let me just run through my notes here on that Vilprixies had given me. Of course, you can also get the Tharbad Royal Guard if you ever get to Tharbad. There is a Minas Morgul anti-rush stack, so if you do take it... actually, no, it's saying that the rush stack doesn't exist anymore. But it looks like it does still happen for the Blackgate and Minas Morgul, so it is... you can be... There is an anti-rush script with those settlements, so that's why I say just turtle, get a strong army first, and then go for Minas Morgul a little later in the game. Osgiliaths do also have a unique unit. They do have the Osgiliath Guards, which should be in the barracks here. Guards of Osgiliath, a very powerful halberd armored unit that you are probably going to want to get for, I believe it's only at the tier 3. Let's just check that to confirm. Yeah, you do need the tier 3 army barracks to unlock those. You can, of course, also unlock, you can upgrade a Numinos if you ever get over there, being a Dunedain nation. And I believe that is pretty much it for the campaign side of things. Of course, if you guys have any other tips or strategies for playing Gondor, leave them in the comments below, or if I missed anything, or if I was incorrect about anything, just put that in the comments below, because I want these videos to also be a hub as a guide for basically playing these nations, as there is a lot of discussion in the Discord, but the Discord has tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of messages, so, I mean, yeah, you can use the search feature, but things can be a little messy in there. Discord isn't great for, I think, being a forum and just having dedicated... because people just talk a lot in Discord, which is great. I love Discord, but I'd also like to have just a dedicated, guide resource that you can have. So if you have any campaign strategy advice, or if I was wrong or anything, just let it be mentioned in the comments down below. And now we will switch over to the battle map. Welcome to the battle map. Now, there are more units unique to Gondor than there are unit slots that you can have in your army. So, because of that, we are going to first display the infantry, followed by a second sequence, which I will show the archers and the cavalry, and then I'll also show a little battle at the end there, so stay tuned if you want to watch a little bit of a defensive battle, because we're Gondor. I felt it was very fitting to actually use the Ramus Ekor map, although I actually have deployed on the wrong side of it. Oh well, not much can be done there. Anyway, also I have given all the units their armor upgrades so that if they have a upgraded look, you can just see them here rather than showing the unupgraded and upgraded looks. As you can kind of just see those if you look at the unit cards themselves, and if you don't see your Gondor infantry, for example, looking, like they're in full plate armor, then it's because you don't have their armor upgrade. So I figured that's an easier way to display what the units can look like in their glory. So, as I like to do, I will start off with the generic bodyguard that you have as Gondor. So, as Gondor, you have the Captain's Bodyguard, a wonderful name there. Captain's Bodyguard, 47-man strong battalion. These guys are just spear and shielded units. They are very good at holding the line, keeping your general alive with their high defensive skill. At 32 total defense, and 10 attack is actually pretty decent for spears. Keep them away from armor-piercing units that Mordor likes to throw at you, but they will keep your general alive. They keep him safe from cavalry threats and so on. Don't expect a lot of kills with your general's bodyguard, but do expect them to be very stalwart defenders, and they can basically hold a choke point pretty much by themselves very well, even though they're not like a high model count unit or like a pike unit. They can do very well at holding the line. So that is the Captain's Bodyguard. I will now go into the militia tiers. So I guess we'll just start off left to right here. First of all, the Amphilos pikemen. Arguably, these guys could probably be put in the tier 2 just behind, or just ahead of the militia tier, higher up, I guess, however you want to say that. The Amphilos pikemen, 3 attack, 3 charge, but 11 total defense with the armor upgrade, so -3. Their basic armor is actually only 4. So the stats are a little misleading. Just check the armor display that I have on the unit cards here. So their base defense would be 8, not 11 here. But I did want to show that they do have a visual upgrade. They kind of put on these helmets and pauldrons and stuff. Before that, they're just wearing like these kind of chainmail coifs around their head, and they're not wearing the steel pauldrons either. So they do get a visual upgrade. I believe that happens at the Silver Shield, so the second tier. I could be mistaken. It could be the first tier. But they are pikemen, and they are very powerful. Of course, pikemen in Medieval 2, at least in the Third Age mod and Divide and Conquer, pikemen are incredibly powerful. And that really just comes down to the fact that pikes have additional reach over other units. And in Third Age and Divide and Conquer, their secondary weapon has been removed. So in vanilla Medieval 2, pikemen have like a sword or a sidearm that they will use if an enemy gets too close to them, or if they are not in spear wall formation, or if they get flanked, they'll have to switch to their sidearm. That does not happen in Divide and Conquer, so pikemen always have their pikes out, and they can keep enemies at range, and they can attack relatively fast with the stabbing animation that they have with these things. So they are militia tier in terms of their general stat spread, but they punch definitely above their weight class. These are a fiefdom unit, and because of that, they are only available around Amphilos and Andras. So these are your westernmost regions: Londgalen, Thorogrondost, and I forget the name of the one kind of in the middle there. It's your westernmost starting settlement. I showed it earlier in the video, but those are the only places you can get them outside of your fiefdom barracks, which you can build in Minas Tirith, Dol Amroth, or Umar. So a fiefdom unit is not available anywhere. They are only available in certain regions. So that is the Amphilos pikemen, a very, very useful unit, especially for holding back the tides of Haradrim cavalry forces that they may send your way, as well as Mordor's just hordes of orcs. These guys can hold the line well for you. Next to them, your true initial militia. These are the Territorial Guardsmen. These guys do have their visual upgrades, so they wear the black tabards with the white tree on them and additional chainmail. This is what they basically look like. Just a standard 312 spearmen, which actually have respectable stats for being a militia unit. You get 178 of them. They're roughly equivalent to other standard rank-and-file early-game spearmen that you'll get across other nations, though the Gondor variant does have typically lower attack than other factions. Other factions might have 4 attack, while Gondor only has 3. They do have a decent charge and a base defense of 13 is pretty well for them, just being a militia tier unit. Normally you see this quality at the 2nd tier for most other nations of men when it comes to their mainline spears, but you get this quality at your tier 1. So these are the territorial guardsmen. Of course, they have shield wall, which gives them added utility there. Just a decent policing force unit. Keep them as a garrison, throw them against cavalry. There are many uses for cheap and cost-effective spears. The way I like to play Gondor is I don't like to use the militia. I prefer to use the fiefdom units and the professional troops. Just my own personal preference, so I don't often use these guys. It does make the campaign a little more challenging, as you can't rely on your more cheap units that you can spam out a bit faster. Next to them, the classic Gondor Militia. I love these guys. They are pretty much a baseline unit that I feel like all other units are balanced around. 6 attack, 10 defense without the armor upgrades. They do not actually have a visual upgrade. They kind of always just have this look in the current iteration of the mod. Just a standard sword and board unit. Nothing too fancy going on with these guys. No shield wall or anything like that, but they are better than, like, other standard units. They're going to be better than most orcs you fight up until you get into the Uruk tiers. Like, heavy Uruks will beat the Gondor Militia, but they're going to trade, you know, they're going to beat Orc Band, Orc Raiders, those sorts of things. They'll fight well enough. Just keep them away from cavalry, because they cannot take a cavalry charge at all. They do not have shield wall to even bolster their defense against cavalry charges. And the final militia unit, I mean, these guys are pretty powerful. The Lamadin Clansmen, 6 attack, 6 charge, 15 defense, 12 basic without the armor upgrades. So I'm actually kind of questioning if it's worth it to be showing the unit cards for the upgraded variant, now that it kind of confuses things a little bit. But the Lamadin Clansmen can't hide anywhere. They are armor piercing with the clubs here that they have. So they have a lot of utility as a cheap, relatively high battalion count unit with 164 men per unit. They are great at facing off against mortar bodyguards. They do not have shield wall, so keep them away from cavalry, and they are just very cost effective at taking out enemy heavy armored units, but they themselves don't have the best defensive stats, though for their tier they are quite strong. It's questionable, like they might actually more so belong on tier 2 than tier 1, though they do have, I guess they have the same stats as the Gondor Militia in terms of attack, but they do have armor piercing and additional base defense. So maybe it would be more suitable to put them in like a tier 1.5, kind of between tier 1 and tier 2 here. Alright, so now going on to the mainline tier, we have the Gondor Spearmen and the Gondor Infantry. So the classic Gondorian soldiers that are seen in the movies with their film armor. Gondor Spearmen only having 6 attack, 22 base defense, plus 2 here with the silver upgrades. And the Gondor Infantry, 8 attack and 19 base defense, plus 2 from the upgrades here. So just a very good rank and file tier 2 troops that you can recruit. 152 men per battalion. These guys are very sturdy. And this really is a strength of Gondor, is their heavy infantry, I would say. They're overall very well balanced as a nation, but you have some fantastic looking, both looking and in combat effective troops here. So Gondor Spearmen, again, like basically the role is the same as the first units here. Basically the Spearmen are just a direct upgrade to the Guardsmen, and the Gondor Infantry are the direct upgrade to the Gondor Militia. So if you want a more professional troop, recruit these guys. And the way I play my Gondor campaigns, like I said, I try not to recruit the Guardsmen or the Militia. I try to go with only professional soldiers, so I like to go with Gondor Infantry and Gondor Spearmen. Just a personal thing I like to do for flavor reasons. The other unit I have basically connected with this tier are the Lasarnoch Axemen. Very similar visuals when they have their upgrades. Without their upgrades, they kind of just wear these tabards. 8 attack, 19 defense, so same base defense as the Gondor Infantry. But they have a armor piercing, given that they have two-handed axes, and they frighten nearby enemy infantry. So a little less resistant to arrow fire. They are weaker in that regards, as they don't have shields, but they have very good armor. They have armor piercing. So the Lasarnoch Axemen, limited to only 2 regions. That would be in Karasas, which is the region that Lasarnoch is in, or I guess Lasarlak is the region, Karasast is the town, and anywhere you have a fiefdom barracks. So quite limited in recruitment capability, but they are very good troops. These guys are probably going to be your go-to Nazgul killers for most of the campaign, if not your entire campaign, as you really don't have many armor-piercing options. There's a couple here and there. But you don't have like a dedicated recruit anywhere armor-piercing unit. You have to rely on your fiefdoms, being the Lasarnok Axemen, being the Lamedon Clansmen, and the Guards of Osgiliath when we get to them. You don't have armor-piercing ranged options, and nor do you have armor-piercing cavalry options. So you really have to rely on these guys as your basically general killers in the later stages of the campaign, and they are your best tool for fighting the Nazgul. So a great unit. I absolutely love these guys. I hope you recruit a lot of them in your campaigns, and I would recommend doing that. Now, going on into what I will dub Tier 3, and then the, I guess, Tier 4 more or less elite units here. Basically following the trend as the basically to what the Gondor Spearmen are to the Territorial Guardsmen, the Citadel Guard are to the Gondor Spearmen. So just a direct upgrade, higher morale, higher stats all around than the Gondor Spearmen. These guys go up to 9 attack with a 30 total defense. Very good morale. They are not locked, but they will fight till the last few men in the battalion. Of course, they have shield wall that is common across the spear tiers of Gondor. They do also have a sword on their hips as a sidearm, but they don't use it. They just use the spears here. It would be interesting if you could actually switch between melee weapons in the mod, and maybe that is possible because there is the alternate attack feature. So it could be interesting if you could actually use the swords with them if you chose, and then use the spears if you didn't want to use the sword attack. But there's no weapon swapping mechanic really for this game. It's just ranged fire or melee combat. So Citadel Guard, just a more elite version of the Gondor Spearmen. You do lose about 25 men in the unit as you upgrade, but the stat spread and the stat increase definitely makes up for it. These guys are going to be way more combat effective than the Gondor Spearmen, though they will come at an increased recruitment and upkeep cost. And in similar vein as the Spearmen are to the Guardsmen and as their infantry are to the militia, the Wardens of the White Tower are to the Gondor Infantry, what the Gondor Infantry are to the Gondor Militia. It's a very long way to say it. 2 more attack than the Citadel Guard, but 2 less defense. These guys are actually regional locked to only Minas Tirith and Osgiliath, so they are not available anywhere. I believe the Citadel Guard are available anywhere, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, these guys are available anywhere if you build the barracks. The Wardens of the White Tower are region locked to their nearby regions. They do have locked morale, though, and they inspire your nearby troops, so they'll keep everyone fighting, and they just have incredible melee stats, and they look absolutely brilliant, don't they, with the Fountain Guard helmets, and then just the shields and the capes. They are some of the best that you will be able to field. So, in fact, if anything, I feel like these guys, I would say you can bundle all of these guys here into about the same tier. They're all very elite. So we'll go over here, the Guards of Osgiliath, locked to only the Osgiliaths, and you must rebuild them. Similar to the Wardens of the White Tower, the Guards of Osgiliath do inspire your nearby troops. They are halberds, so they have armor piercing, and they have bonus against cavalry, which makes them very, very powerful. No visual upgrade on them as far as I'm aware. I believe they just keep this look. In fact, lower their defense to 23 would be their base defense, since they don't have, since they have the armor upgrades at 25. It was a little misleading, so a little bit weaker, I would say, than the Wardens of the White Tower and the Citadel Guard, but they are halberds, which just kind of boost them up here. That's why I put them in the back. They are a very potent unit. And my favorite unit of the entire Gondorian roster, I'd say, it's tough between them and the Lasarlok Axemen, the Fountain Guard, the elite of the elite Guardians of the Fountain at the top of the courts of Minas Tirith. 7 attack pikemen with 22 base defense, 23 with the armor upgrade. They do not have a visual upgrade. These soldiers are locked morale, so they do fight to the death, and they do raise the morale of your nearby troops. These guys are incredible at holding choke points, such as the bridges of Tharbad, or at Caer Andros and defending settlements. They are your last line of defense and your best line of defense. The Fountain Guard, an incredible unit. Of course, you can only get them in Minas Tirith, so they are very limited in that capacity. but you are able to train them, I believe, every 10 to 15 turns, so you can get a new unit. Or you can get quite a few of these units throughout the campaign, though only at Minas Tirith. The final infantry unit, the other locked option you have, the Minas Ithil Guardians, a unit that very rarely sees play in the current iteration of the campaign. These guys are two-handed sword-wielding units with 16 total attack, 25 defense, although 24 because I have one armor upgrade on them, and locked morale. You do need to have Minas Morgul to recruit these guys, but they are a nice reward if only they were available a little bit quicker. And I know that the modding team has been quite busy lately in terms of other things going on in their lives, so I don't want to say like I have any promises, but I will probably just go ahead and throw a file into them that says, here's a couple of changes to Gondor. The Minas Ithil Guardians can now be trained from the Tower of the Moon unique building in Minas Morgul, rather than having to raise the culture all the way. I think it should just be, I think they should have no culture requirement and just have a requirement of holding the settlement for like a certain amount of time to be able to actually start recruiting them. That's just my thoughts on it. I think that's a better system than waiting ages in the campaign to be able to get these guys. So that is it for the dedicated infantry units for Gondor. I will now transition over to the archers and the cavalry. Now here we are with the archers and the cavalry, and because there's a lot less of these units, I decided to just throw in the armor upgraded variants if they had them. Directly behind the units, though, a couple of these guys don't actually have visual upgrades, so there's going to be some duplicates here. We'll start off first with the Lebanon Marines, since they're the only javelin unit we have. The Lebanon Marines are a 5 attack, 7 missile attack, and 14 defense spear and javelin using unit. They are your only javelin option. They are not armor piercing either with their missiles, so you're not going to do a lot of damage with these guys to heavily armored infantry. Ideally, you will use these guys up against lighter infantry, such as if you're fighting against Harad. These guys are very useful against Haradrim spearmen or Haradrim pikemen. They also have utility up against any cavalry that you might fight, which is mostly going to come from Harad or Khand. Their biggest and most useful attribute is that they do give you a direct counter outside of artillery to Mumakil. So of course, Mumakil are very, very weak to thrown projectiles. They will die very fast because there is a very high multiplier for javelin missiles up against units that are classified as elephants. So they just absolutely destroy any elephant type units. That means Mumakil and Great Beasts. In your campaign, especially as you get into the later stages where Mordor is pumping out those Great Beasts, you are going to want to have a couple of units of Lebanon Marines per army just to counter those threats. So they are a very useful unit to have, and they do have a visual upgrade as well, where they equip it's kind of similar to the Onfalos pikemen, where they equip the helmets and the shoulder pads, and they also have more chainmail on their unit. Going into the archers now are the archer militia. They do not have a visual upgrade. These guys are a 3-3-8 in terms of melee, missile, and defense. Low accuracy, 150 meter range, and only 18 missiles. They're just your basic archer unit. They're better than most other nations, like intro archer unit, and by that I mean I'm excluding elves, of course. Elves are ridiculous with their militia archers, but against other like nations of men or orcs, your starter archer unit is respectable, I would say, at least, especially when it comes into terms of defense. Like 8 defense is decent for an entry-level archer unit. Don't expect too much out of these guys, but they are good for just throwing up a quick defense of any settlements that you have. And of course, archers in general are just very useful no matter what their stats are. Having just a ranged projectile that hits an enemy, and as long as you keep them out of combat, they can do very good damage over time. Though these are going to be the least effective of your archer choices. Next to them, I have set the Blackroot Vale Archers. These guys do have a visual upgrade, as you can see here. They change out the leathers that they wear. Overall, mostly the same kind of style, though they do have a bit more chainmail equipped as well. Blackroot Vale Archers, honestly, not too special of a unit. They have 6 melee attacks. They have a high melee for being an archer unit. 4 missile attack is a bit better than the militia archers, and they do have extra missiles, range, and accuracy. 1 more defense at a total of 9 there. Again, they aren't like amazing archers, but they are better at doing their job than the Archer Militia. So if you do have the ability to recruit these guys over Archer Militia, I would recommend it, as they are better at the job. But outside of that, they're not all too fancy. It's the next couple of archers that you're really going to want to be using in your campaigns. And of course, both these units fall off into the later stages of the campaign as well. Now, going into your main line, Gondor archers. So here they are with and without the armor upgrades. These guys have a 5-5 spread of melee and missile with 15 defense, 24 missiles with 10 less range than the Blackroot Vale archers, but they are much more defensive with the 11 base armor. When they're upgraded, that goes up to 17. Meaning that they're going to be able to trade against other archer fire very well, as they can tank a lot of incoming arrow damage. Do keep them away from, you probably won't encounter this, but any crossbows, like Isengard crossbows, will definitely counter the Gondor archers. They're not amazing in melee either, so keep them away from that, and of course keep them protected from cavalry, as they just don't have the melee stats to really effectively fight back. Their armor and their melee attack does at least allow them to combat other enemy infantry, at least in the lower and mid tiers, decently effectively, but they are going to be outclassed by anything that's like a dedicated melee unit in their tier. Like a Gondor infantry unit is going to be a Gondor archer unit, for example there. That's the Gondor archers. I'm a really big fan of these guys. I just love that full plate look that Gondor has. It just looks so, so good. The next archer unit we have are the Athelian Rangers. I knew they didn't have a visual upgrade, so I didn't include a backup unit here. 7 melee, 6 missile, and 13 defense. 36 missiles with exceptional accuracy and range. The Athelian Rangers have one other bonus that they have against other Rangers, and that is that their missiles do have a bonus against elephants. So Mumakil and Great Beast they will perform better on than any other archer unit that had the same missile attack and accuracy. Though it's not a big bonus, like you won't see them just destroying units of Mumakil within a couple of volleys. It'll still take quite a few volleys to take down the Mumakil, but they will do it more effectively than any other archer unit. So it is worthwhile to have quite a few of these guys in your army if you don't have the Lebanon Marines to shoot at the Mumakil, if it's like a last resort kind of thing. So that is one specialty the Athelian Rangers have. I can't remember if they have any other direct bonus. It might be that their accuracy, it's very rare to see any human ranger unit with exceptional accuracy. So I believe the Athelian Rangers, of all the human rangers, have the highest accuracy and the bonus against Mumakil. So they have that unique thing. I might decide to do a video comparing all of the rangers and their kind of specialties, because they are all a little bit different from each other, even though generally they all have the same function, like stats and, you know, melee attack, missile attack, and defense. So that are the Athelian Rangers. Of course, you can only get these in Athelian, so that are like the regions east of the River Anduin, Esau's Gileath, Carandros, Ostathil, or Haud Halnur. So only in those 4 settlements, and wherever you have a fiefdom barracks, as they do count as a fiefdom unit. Finally, for the archers, we get into the Osgiliath veterans, and I had to show both of their looks here. Of course, when they are unupgraded, they just kind of have these tabards on, no helmets. Some of these gents have eye patches on, headbands, and then they become equipped with the full Gondorian plate. So, Osgiliath veterans, your best they're not as good at archery as the Athelian Rangers, but they are much more defensive and much better in melee. They also come with stakes, 9 melee attack, 6 missile attack with 20 total defense, and high accuracy with 30 total arrows. So not as great at the range duties as the Athelian Rangers, but much better in general terms of utility. Having them in combat, they're going to be better in melee. And they can even counterfire against other archers better, as they do have 10 armor plus the 4 shield value, while the Athelian Rangers' only defense is going to be their 6 armor. Really, with the Rangers, you just want to keep them at a range that outranges whatever they're shooting at. So let's go with veterans. Of course, these guys are your unique bodyguard for Boromir, and stakes are always incredibly powerful. Also, so going into the cavalry, you have 3 just standard units outside of your options from Tholam Roth or mercenaries from Rohan. First of all, the Gondor Cavalry Militia, they do not have a visual upgrade. These guys are 4, 6, and 10, average morale with a 3 secondary attack, so they actually lose a little bit of their attack power after their charge ends. Just an okay cavalry unit. It's always nice to have, you know, just a general cavalry unit that you can use. Like, they're better than, like, the peasant scouts that Rohan has, but they're much worse than the Rohirrim. They don't have the best mass. They can do okay at the job. Have them take down orc archers. That's probably their best role, is just to throw them against orc archers, or as a kind of, like they're not really anti-cav. They're going to lose to most other cavalry. But if you need to, like, protect your flanks or something, or protect your archers, or just tie down a cavalry unit so you can get some spearmen in there, they can get that job done, at least decently well, though they're not going to hold up too well in prolonged combat. Next to them are the Gondor Cavalry. Like the Gondor Infantry, they have the same kind of upgrade sequence, where first of all they are in these tabards with the chainmail, and then they equip the full plate mail. I'm a big fan of these guys also. I really like their look, and the fact that they have these black and white tabards over the horses. I think these guys look fantastic. So 7 attack, 6 charge, and 16 total defense. When upgraded, that goes to 18 defense. They are skilled against mount, so these knights are actually usable against enemy cavalry, which is one of their best roles. And they can do well in prolonged melee combat with their decent melee defense, armor, and shield values. Overall, a great cavalry unit. You are not a cavalry nation, of course, but you do have respectable cavalry options, though you probably will get outclassed by all of your neighbors. Like, Dol Amroth has better cavalry and more options. Harad has... I don't know if I can really say Harad has better cavalry. They don't have quite as armored cavalry, but they do have very powerful, like, serpent riders, light cavalry, Haradrim lancers, camels. They have a lot more variety. Khan has a lot of cavalry options. Rohan has a lot of cavalry options. Even Mordor, like, Mordor gets all of the cavalry of its neighbors. Like, they get Runic cavalry, Variags, they get Haradrim cavalry. So that is where the bonus against cav comes with the Gondor cavalry. But in terms of cavalry effectiveness, your neighbors are stronger in that regard. And finally, the last fiefdom unit, the Pinnith Gelen Cavalry. These guys, 7 attack, 10 charge, so higher charge than both your Gondor Cavalry Militia and the Gondor Cavalry. They do have long spears here, and 15 total defense. When upgraded, that goes to 17. Here are their pre-upgrade visuals, just the green tabard with chainmail, and these, I don't know what the shape is. It's like a freaky triangular oval shape shield. I don't know if that counts as a... I guess this would be a... No, this isn't a kite shield. Forget the name of this type of shield. It's not a kite shield. It's some type of other freaky name. But when they do get upgraded, they do kind of equip the leather breastplate. They equip these kind of like chainmail skirts and have steel pauldrons with the helmets on. So they do have a visual upgrade as well. Great cavalry unit to use. They do have this green, which I am a big fan of. I like how they have these green tabards. And that high charge, like, this is your dedicated hammer and anvil unit. 6 secondary attack. They aren't lances, but 10 charge is very nice, though they have a little bit less defense than the Gondor cavalry. Actually, it's basically the same. I mean, 15 to 16, they're very much functionally the same as the Gondor cavalry, but they are fiefdom locked, so you can only get them in a couple of regions, being Saruland, Kirith Eor, and of course your fiefdom barracks. So probably a little more useful than the Gondor cavalry. In fact, the best way I'm going to say this, these are your go-to lancers, while the Gondor cavalry are your go-to melee fighters and anti-cavalry units. So that's how you would differentiate these two. So I'll go ahead and now show a quick battle as I wrap up my thoughts on Gondor. And here we are now on the battlefield, and finally I managed to get us on the correct side of the Ramus Ekor, which is kind of a cool battle map, because you can kind of deploy on these like little exterior ramparts. I do wish you could go all the way, but it's a little bit buggy if you try to do that. You can go about to there with the archers. I feel like you never really get to see this battle map in action. It rarely happens. But it can be quite fun if you do ever get the chance to play it. We are fighting against Gundabad here, and I don't think they are actually going to be assaulting me through the gates like I had hoped they would. I guess something weird happened with changing the attacker and the defender on this battle map. I tried to make myself the defender to have the enemy attack me, but it appears that the AI just wants to be a little bit strange. So we'll just watch the battle go out. Of course, the next faction for next week is Gundabad. So more than likely, I would say 90% chance I should have them actually out by next weekend. I don't foresee anything showing up to delay the next video. Oh, now they're coming through the gates. I should pull back my forces, I think. Never mind, lads. As the cavalry just charged directly into the Black Shield archers for an alpha strike. This is what Gondor cavalry are great at, just cutting through archers. Just don't throw them against spears, but that goes for all cavalry. Chances are Gundabad's going to throw some trolls at us, or they might just act weird. The AI is sometimes very strange, especially on these other different types of battle maps. In fact, these Black Shield archers might actually beat my Gondor cavalry because, yeah, Gundabad is very elite, so we're going to retreat, have the guards of the Osgiliath and the Fountain Guards try to defend. Let's set a control group here that I'll give to the AI, just so that we don't have to control so much here. Take over the cavalry, because sometimes I just don't feel like controlling a lot of my forces. Gundabad, are you actually going to pour through? Yes, they are. Kind of a poor battle map, in all honesty, to showcase a big battle when there's only one entrant, but that is kind of the nice thing about the Ramus Ekor, is it is very defensible. If ever you are pushed back to, like, Minas Tirith, I mean, arguably there's the case to just defend Minas Tirith, but you can also easily just defend through these settlements here. And, like, yeah, limiting someone to only this one choke point without them being able to take any walls, it's quite nice. And also, if you are able to hold back the tide of Mordor, like if they do push through the Osgiliaths, you can at least prevent them from sieging Minas Tirith, and you can keep your recruitment centers going for some time there. Look, these snow trolls are going to run up and attack the Osgiliath veterans on the walls here, I think. Pretty smart move from them. I don't think the Osgiliath veterans are going to do too well up against the mighty snow trolls. There they go. Oh, it is horrendous to see that happening. Fountain Guard fighting the Pale Uruks. Pale Uruks also, or Orc Hunters actually breaching our lines now. Breaching the Captain's Bodyguard, who I did give an armor upgrade to, but that is only for the Reunited Kingdom. That's actually not for Gondor. This army was 90% auto-generated, except it had some artillery, which I decided to remove, and I just threw in my own couple of units here. Where are the Minas Ithil Guardians? I need you guys to be doing your duty. Let's go to the veterans fighting above. Thunder Spearmen engaging with the Black Shield Warriors. Probably not a favorable trade. Black Shield Warriors are quite powerful. Gondor Spearmen up against Snow Trolls. Yeah, that's not a good place for them to be either. Let's perhaps alleviate them if we can. The Snow Trolls are just going to completely tear through our battle lines. This really is just like fighting against elite Mordor forces, but here we have the Guards of Osgiliath fighting up against Black Shield Warband and even Bolg's Champions, their evil counterpart to the far north. The Benin Marines, I didn't exactly get these guys in the position I wanted them to. Oh well. Try to get the cavalry over here to flank against the Snow Trolls. Can we actually throw a javelin, please? Oof, they're being weird. Not the entirety of their force. Looks like that is. We are pretty much tied. These armies are pretty even, which is good to see. I mean, Gundabad is a very elite nation, but Gondor has a very balanced force and some very powerful elites. We still have many in reserve, so I think I'll be able to win this battle. Let's see, can we actually get a charge here, or is the battle map going to prevent me? Nope, here comes the charge of the Gondorian Knights into the Snow Orc Spears. And not the best target, but they did get 20-some-odd kills there on the charge. The Knights are starting to fall. Arthurian Rangers did get compromised by the Black Shield Warriors. Let's see if we can actually get a charge up the ramp here. Probably won't do so well. It's uphill. They are still stuck fighting in combat, so they might not actually get a charge order off. No, they do not. That is unfortunate. Pull the cavalry back. It is all for naught. Send in the... Well, actually, how many reinforcements do we have? Send in the Gondor Spearmen. Minas Ithil Guardians, I don't even know what they're fighting right now. There must have been some units that got stuck into combat here. Come on, just engage up against the Bolg's Champions. Minas Ithil Guardians with the Great Sword Charge, very high charge bonus. Can we get a few kills here? There they are. Look at that beautiful, beautiful charge, that beautiful engagement on the Bolg's Champions as they cut them to pieces. Fountain Guard fighting desperately up against the Black Shield Warband. I won't play out the entirety of the battle. I'll go ahead and probably end it right about here, so hope you guys are enjoying version 5, and I will see you next week as we review, or not review, but do an overview of the Orcs of Gundabad. Until then, my friends, farewell.